Thank you for joining for our next session that we have multiple sessions this spring with Dr. Elliott's nutrition class out of our health campus. This one we have Fueled by Fiber. We have Sydney, Haley, and Kate joining us today to walk through fiber. I'm sure give us some great tips, helpful information. Certainly, hopefully some new stuff, I'm sure, but also probably some reminders as well. A lot of times, with social media and all those things out there, how we get information coming from all sorts of ways, it can be difficult to really weed through of what is credible information. As something we're getting from an influencer, do they really know, or are we getting it from someone who is a credible resource, a registered dietitian or someone along those lines. So getting this information today, I think, is great. You can be sure to know exactly where it's coming from. These students are working their way towards becoming a registered dietitian, and maybe we'll see them on the other side one day once they've gotten their credentials, and they'll be leading us again through healthy eating and how to navigate through that. But today specifically, we'll be talking about fiber and Fueled by Fiber. So thank you all. Take it away.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for being here today. We're going to talk about something incredibly simple, yet profoundly powerful to our health, dietary fiber. Even if nutrition isn't your field, fiber is one of those concepts that quietly influences many areas of study, such as human physiology, psychology, education, community health, food systems, and even economics. It's a nutrient that appears in every set of dietary guidelines, every chronic disease prevention strategy, and in nearly every conversation about our gut health. And yet, despite its importance, fiber is often overlooked, misunderstood, or reduced to a single idea that it's just good for digestion. In reality, fiber plays a far more complex and fascinating role in the body. It affects how we metabolize food, how our gut microbiome functions, and how our cardiovascular system responds to diet, and even how full or energized we feel throughout the day, which I know is very important. It's a small dietary component with surprisingly large implications. By the end of the session, we hope that you will have a clearer understanding of what fiber actually is and how it works inside the body. And while increasing it can make a meaningful difference in our daily health, not just for individuals, but for communities, students, and populations at large. Our goal is to highlight why something as ordinary as fiber deserves a place in our conversations about health, education, and human performance. So before we dive in, we have this quick little QR code you can go ahead and scan just to kind of get an idea of what you already know about fiber. And there are some this or that questions. And then we will go ahead and get started. We'll give you about 5 minutes, and then we'll go ahead and check in and see if anyone needs more time. All right. It looks like on our end that everyone filled it out, so we're going to go ahead and dive on in. All right. So what is fiber? Dietary fiber is the non-digestible part of plant foods. So when you eat plant-based foods, there's a portion that your body can't break down, and that's a good thing. Fiber comes in two main forms, and each of them plays an important different role. We're also going to touch on this again at the end of the presentation, but just a brief overview. Our soluble fiber is the type of fiber that forms a gel-like substance in the gut. Kind of think about what happens when you stir oats into water. That thickening effect is similar to what soluble fiber does to your digestive system and slows down our digestion. And because of that, it has major benefits to our health. The second type is our insoluble fiber. This is the type that does not dissolve in water, and instead it adds bulk to the stool and keeps things moving through the digestive tract. Insoluble fiber is the fiber that keeps you regular by supporting those bowel movements and overall digestive comfort. The combination of these two contributes to our gut health, metabolic stability, and our long-term disease prevention. So there are 3 major health benefits we're going to talk about, and we'll go ahead and start with the one that most people think of first, and that is our digestive health. So fiber adds bulk to our stool, which helps maintain regular bowel movements and prevents constipation. But the story goes much deeper than that. Fiber also serves as the primary food source for our beneficial gut bacteria. The trillions of little microorganisms that live in our intestines play a major role in our health. When these bacteria feed on the fiber, they produce short-chain fatty acids. These compounds help strengthen our gut lining, reduce inflammation, and support the metabolic processes that occur throughout our body. These short-chain fatty acids also help regulate our immune function and play a role on our mood and cognition. A healthier gut microbiome is linked to better immunity, digestion, and a reduce of chronic disease. So when we talk about feeding your gut, fiber is the primary fuel. Without adequate fiber, the gut microbiome becomes less diverse and less resilient, which can affect everything from digestion to inflammation to our overall well-being. So our long lectures, back-to-back meetings, and limited breaks often mean our meals are rushed or delayed. A fiber-rich diet keeps digestion predictable and comfortable, reducing the likelihood of mid-class discomfort, bloating, or sluggishness. A well-fed gut microbiome also supports a sharper thinking and steadier energy, which are two things that really matter when you're teaching, grading, or navigating a long day of academic responsibilities. The second benefit is going to be heart health. Soluble fiber binds to bile acids in the gut and forces the liver to pull LDL cholesterol, also known as our bad cholesterol, from the bloodstream, which overall reduces the LDL cholesterol that can form plaque in our arteries, leading to heart disease. This effect is well documented and one of the reasons why high fiber foods often recommended in our heart healthy diets. But the benefits don't stop there. High fiber foods often tend to be rich in vitamins and minerals, as well as antioxidants and phytonutrients that support vascular health and reduce inflammation. People who eat more fiber also tend to consume fewer highly processed foods, which further supports our cardiovascular health. So when we talk about fiber for heart health, it's both a direct effect on our cholesterol and our overall dietary patterns that comes from our fiber-rich foods. I like to think of it as a package deal, and it's one that consistently shows up in research as protective and beneficial. Academic life can be surprisingly stressful with our tight deadlines, heavy workloads, student needs, and administrative responsibilities that all add up. Chronic stress is known to influence our heart health, and diet becomes one of the most accessible tools for buffering that impact. A fiber-rich eating pattern supports our heart health over long term, but it also helps stabilize energy and blood pressure throughout the day. For professors juggling teaching, research, and service, it translates into better stamina, steadier focus, and a reduced physiological burden during these demanding semesters. And then the last one we're going to talk about is blood glucose and regulation. So another major reason that fiber matters is because of the blood sugar and satiety, which satiety is another word for fullness. And that has a strong impact on how we feel throughout the day and how we manage our energy and our overall metabolic health. Fiber slows the rate at which food moves through the digestive tract. When digestion slows, nutrients, including our carbohydrates, enter our bloodstream more gradually. This prevents sharp spikes and crashes in our blood sugar, which many people experience after eating low fiber meals. Over time, these repetitive spikes can contribute to insulin resistance and increase the risk for type 2 diabetes. But fiber also affects how full we feel, like that satiety I'd mentioned. High fiber foods often take up more space in the stomach, and that soluble fiber that folds the gel-like texture in the gut prolongs digestion and enhances satiety. The combination of the slower digestion and increased fullness helps regulate appetite and can reduce overeating without strict calorie counting or restrictive diets. Even insoluble fiber contributes indirectly by supporting regularity and overall digestive comfort, which can influence eating patterns and food choices. When people feel better digestively, they tend to make more consistent and balanced choices throughout the day. We know that long, stressful work days can lead to long stretches without eating, and fiber-rich meals help maintain steady energy and prevent mid-afternoon crashes that makes it harder to stay focused or patient. Instead of feeling ravenous between classes or relying on quick snacks from the nearest vending machine, fiber helps keep hunger stable and cognition sharper. It supports the kind of sustained mental performance that academic work demands.
So, now that we've discussed what fiber is and some of the health benefits it provides, I'm going to talk about how we can actually identify fiber in foods we eat every day. A lot of people know that fiber is important for digestion, heart health, and blood sugar regulation, but it can sometimes be difficult to recognize which foods are good sources of fiber and which are not. In this section of the presentation, I will go over the characteristics of food that are rich in fiber, along with examples of common high fiber foods. Then we'll compare those with foods that tend to be lower in fiber so we can better understand their differences. Finally, I'll briefly explain how to read a nutrition label and how that can help you identify fiber content when choosing foods at the grocery store. Understanding these differences can make it easier to build meals and snacks that naturally include more fiber and support overall health. For this section, we are going to focus on what fiber-rich foods actually look like in our everyday diet. A lot of people hear that fiber is important, but they're not always sure how to identify foods that contain a good amount of it. One of the first characteristics of fiber-rich foods is that they are typically come from plant sources. Fiber is naturally found in plants such as fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, nuts, and seeds. Animal products like meat, eggs, and dairy do not contain fiber because fiber is a part of the structural components of plants. Another key characteristic is that fiber-rich foods are usually whole or minimally processed. When foods are processed heavily, the part of the plant that contains fiber, such as the bran and the skins, are often removed. Whole foods tend to keep these parts intact, which means they provide more fiber. You may also notice that fiber-rich foods often contain visible plant structures. This can include things like skins on fruits and vegetables, whole grains that still have their outer layer, or seeds and pulp within the food. These structural parts of plants are often where fiber is most concentrated. A helpful guideline when looking at foods or nutrition labels is that the food containing about 3 to 5 grams of fiber per serving is considered a good source of fiber. Many nutrition guidelines recommend aiming for about 25 to 30 grams of fiber per day for adults, although many people in the United States fall short of this amount. Understanding these characteristics can make it easier to recognize fiber-rich foods when grocery shopping or planning meals. Now that we know the characteristics of fiber-rich foods, let's look at some specific examples. First, fruits can be an excellent source of fiber, when they are eaten with their skins. Apple with the skin, pears, and berries are all great examples. The skin and pulp of these fruits contribute significant portions of their fiber content. Vegetables are another important category. Foods like broccoli, carrots, and Brussels sprouts provide both fiber and a variety of vitamins and minerals. Many vegetables also contain both soluble and insoluble fiber, which supports digestive health in different ways. Whole grains are another major source of fiber. Examples include oats, quinoa, brown rice, and whole wheat bread. These foods contain the entire grain kernel, including bran and germ, which are the parts richest in fiber and nutrients. In contrast, refined grains often have those parts removed. Legumes are some of the highest fiber foods available. Black beans, lentils, and chickpeas provide large amounts of fiber along with plant-based protein. Because of this combination, they can also help people feel fuller for longer periods of time. Finally, nuts and seeds such as chia seeds, almonds, and flax seeds are also rich in fiber. Even though they are typically eaten in smaller portions, they still contribute meaningful amounts of fiber to the diet. By including a variety of these foods in meals and snacks, people can increase their fiber intake in a natural and balanced way. Next, let's talk about the opposite side, foods that are typically low in fiber or considered fiber poor. One common characteristic of fiber-poor foods is that they are highly refined or heavily processed. During processing, the parts of the plant that contain fiber are often removed to improve texture or shelf life. For example, when whole grains are refined into white flour, the bran and germ are removed, which significantly reduces the fiber content. Another characteristic is that these foods are often made from white or enriched flour rather than whole grains. While enriched flour may have some vitamins added back after processing, the fiber that was removed is usually not replaced. Fiber-poor foods can also come from animal sources. As I mentioned earlier, fiber only exists in plants. Because of that, foods like meat, poultry, fish, eggs, and dairy products naturally contain little to no fiber. Finally, many fiber-poor foods contain less than 2 grams of fiber per serving. When reading nutrition labels, this can be a helpful way to identify what may not contribute much fiber to the diet. Recognizing these characteristics helps people make a more informed decision when choosing how to increase their fiber intake. Here are some examples of foods that are typically low in fiber. White bread and white rice are common examples because they are made from refined grains. During the refining process, the fiber-rich outer layer of the grain is removed. Highly processed snacks are also often low in fiber. Items like chips and crackers made from refined flour and many packaged snack foods tend to contain minimal fiber while being higher in added fats, sugars, and sodium. Animal products such as meat, poultry, and fish are also another example. While these foods can provide important nutrients like protein and iron, they do not contribute to fiber in the diet. Dairy products, including milk, cheese, and yogurt, are also naturally fiber-free. Again, they can still be part of a healthy diet, but they do not help with meeting fiber goals. Another example is fruit juice without the pulp. While the fruit itself contains fiber, the juicing process removes much of that fiber, leaving the liquid sugars from the fruit. Understanding these examples helps highlight the difference between foods that support fiber intake and those that do not contribute as much. One useful tool for identifying fiber in foods is the nutrition label. When looking at a nutrition label, the fiber content is listed under the total carbohydrate section. It is typically labeled as dietary fiber and is measured in grams per serving. This information allows consumers to compare different products. For example, when choosing between 2 types of bread or cereal, looking at the fiber content can help determine which option provides more or less fiber. As I mentioned earlier, foods around 3 to 5 grams of fiber per serving are considered a good source. Foods that contain even higher amounts, such as 8 grams or more, can be considered excellent sources of fiber. Nutrition labels can also help people identify whether a product is made with whole grains or refined grains. Many products advertise whole grains in the packaging, but the nutrition label gives us a more accurate picture of how fiber is actually present. Learning how to read nutrition labels can empower individuals to make a more informed choice that supports their overall dietary goals.
Okay, today I'm going to be talking about how can we maximize our fiber's effectiveness. So first, I want to talk about the importance of hydration. So when increasing your fiber intake, it is extremely important to also increase your water intake as well. I want you to think of this. Imagine you're making yourself some oatmeal, but you never add any water or milk. It's just going to sit there. So fiber works the same way in that it needs moisture to be able to do its job. Drinking more water is going to help keep your bowel movements more regular and prevent any kind of bloating or discomfort. So when we drink enough fluid, it helps the fiber to soften and move through our gut more easily, and therefore helping to prevent any constipation and will overall keep your digestion moving and comfortable. So when you don't drink enough fluid, it can really slow things down. And that is where you may experience the bloating and gas, and you may even feel worse than before ever increasing your fiber intake. So how much fluid do we even need? Of course, you're not going to need to keep a gallon of water at your desk all day, but you do need to be consistent. I would say at baseline, aim for about 6 to 8 cups or 1.5 to 2 liters per day. So a simple way to start incorporating this is every time you add more fiber, add a glass or cup of water as well. So for example, let's say you're switching to maybe a whole grain bread, adding more fruits and vegetables, or maybe you decide to incorporate a fiber supplement, then you'll definitely want to add a cup of water. As we talked about with water intake and how it helps to keep your digestive system moving, physical activity helps in the same or works in the same way to really help push everything along. So fortunately, you do not need to do anything intense, so no CrossFit or long runs, but just taking a 10 to 20-minute walk after meals will help exponentially. Even just going around the block is going to help keep that digestive system moving and in check and working at optimal levels. If you do not have time for a walk, you can always do some light stretching, yoga, or maybe even try taking the stairs when available. So some practical tips you can start incorporating even today is just by keeping a water bottle nearby, so that way you have that physical reminder to be taking sips throughout the day. If you enjoy tea, maybe adding tea after and between meals. Adding in a cup of water in the morning before your coffee will be helpful. And one that you might not think about is actually eating more foods that have a lot of water content, such as cucumber, watermelon, and even soups. So now we're going to talk about why we should not eat all our fiber at once and rather distribute it through our meals and snacks throughout the day. So when someone is not used to eating a lot of fiber, eating it in small, steady amounts is going to be a lot easier on your gut and reduce any kind of bloating or stomach discomfort. Another benefit to distributing fiber is its role in stabilizing your blood sugar throughout the day, which is going to help prevent any sharp spikes or midday crashes. And lastly, incorporating fiber into each meal and in snacks will help you meet your fiber goal in a way that feels much more manageable than trying to fit in as much fiber as you can into 1 or 2 meals. This way, it helps build healthy habits so that maybe if one meal is a little low in fiber, you still have multiple opportunities to meet your goal. So overall, this is going to help make your fiber goals feel more achievable and less overwhelming, so that when a busy day comes around, you can adapt to your schedule, because ultimately not every day is going to be the same. So next I want to talk about something that seems complicated, but it's actually pretty simple: soluble versus insoluble fiber. And don't worry, you do not need a nutrition degree to be able to understand these, but by the end, you will have an idea of what they are, where you will find them, and how each one helps your body feel its best. So we will first start with soluble fiber. This type dissolves in water and forms a soft gel. Now, if I've already lost you, here's what that means. Think of soluble fiber as the ingredient that thickens something like, let's say, Jell-O, for example. Now, you may be thinking, didn't we just talk about how to keep our gut moving? Wouldn't this just block us up again? Well, think about when you or a patient might be experiencing, let's say, diarrhea. This can be very helpful in getting your gut and bowel movements back to normal. Another really cool thing that soluble fiber helps with is heart health. Because of this gel-like substance it creates, it can actually attach to any cholesterol floating around and carry it out of your body. Therefore, less cholesterol gets absorbed and less cholesterol in your body overall. So now, if you're a visual learner like me, let's see what foods are rich in soluble fiber. So first we have oatmeal in that bottom right corner. Then it's going to be your beans and lentils next to that. And then our fruits like apples, pears, or even berries. And lastly, our chia seeds and flax seeds. So we've talked about soluble fiber, which is kind of acts as the sponge in our body. And now let's talk about insoluble fiber, which is the one that you're probably more familiar with. So unlike soluble fiber, insoluble fiber does not dissolve in water. So it's going to be something that kind of acts like a broom and really keeps your gut moving and in check. So this is going to aid in adding that bulk to your stool, preventing constipation, supporting those regular bowel movements. And just like how soluble fiber helps with cholesterol, insoluble fiber actually is going to help and reduce risk of colon cancer. Because the less time waste sits in our gut, the less time any harmful substances have to irritate our gut. And so we can find these in our whole grain breads and cereals, brown rice, nuts and seeds, leafy greens, and in the skins of our fruits and vegetables. Overall, all kinds of fiber help keep your gut healthy, and eating a variety makes the benefits even stronger. It keeps digestion moving comfortably and supports a healthy gut from the inside out. So, for a quick summary, fiber is the indigestible part of plants that is essential to health, such as heart health, digestive health, blood sugar regulation, and satiety. And as we know, fiber is most abundant in fruits, vegetables, nuts, and seeds. And we can maximize our fiber with hydration and even distribution.
So now we are going to conduct a post assessment. If you could scan the QR code, and we'll give a few minutes to see how your answers have changed throughout after our presentation. Okay, so it looks like we've gotten majority of our responses. So we're going to go through some of the answers about the foods and explain a little bit why. So for the first question, between apple and chocolate pie, everybody got it correct, with the apple being higher in fiber, mostly because of this is an apple with the skin on. So as I talked about earlier, with the skin is most optimal for optimizing fiber intake with fruits. Next is whole wheat bread versus white bread. Whole wheat bread is the correct answer in this scenario because it contains the whole grain with the bran and the germ still intact, whereas white bread contains refined flour, which has removed that bran and germ from the grain. Next, we have hummus versus steak. As I talked about in my part of the presentation, animal foods do not contain very much or no fiber at all, whereas chickpeas are a great source of fiber. Whole milk versus oats or oatmeal. Again, animal products do not contain very much fiber or no fiber at all. So in this scenario, the oats that have that full grain with the germ and the bran is going to be our highest fiber option. Almonds versus peanut butter. Because the almonds are fully intact with their skin on, this option is going to be the higher fiber than processed peanut butter. When you process the peanuts, it's going to strip that fiber off of the peanuts, and there's still some fiber in peanut butter, but not as much as whole almonds. And then we have broccoli versus Lay's potato chips. Lay's potato chips are a processed snack food, so that's going to be fiber is going to be removed from that during processing, whereas broccoli is a plant food, and we talked about how fiber is part of the plant structure. So broccoli is going to be our higher fiber option in this scenario. And thank you for attending our presentation. We'll open it up for questions now if you want to put them in the chat.
Some great information here, ladies. First off, I wanted to ask, could someone have too much fiber? Is this something that we can actually have too much of? And if so, like what might happen if we have too much fiber?
Too much fiber, and especially increasing your fiber from the most like casual Western diet that's already low in fiber, is definitely going to cause a bunch of bloating, gas, discomfort. So it's important that when you start increasing your fiber, you do it slowly. And then, like Kate had said, distributing it over the meals. But yes, too much fiber is definitely going to cause a lot of that GI or gastric distress, and you're going to be pretty uncomfortable.
And then what if like a lot of these high fiber options are good fiber options, it's not really stuff someone likes, or whatever the case may be. Are there alternate ways, like through supplements, that someone could get fiber?
Yes, there are supplements As nutrition students, we like to think of a whole diet. So we want to get all of our micronutrients from a whole diet. But if these are things that are non-negotiables for somebody to eat, then yes, we can do supplementation. It does depend on the kind of supplementation. So fiber, it can be like in a gummy form or a pill form. They are absorbed at different rates and in different ways. So we want to be mindful of what else we're eating with those and how they're absorbed in supplement form.
Excellent. Well, this is now, we've had 2 sessions, and both sessions have commented on taking maybe a little bit of a walk after eating a meal. So I think we're hearing a theme for all of us that have been attending these that, hey, it might be a good idea, even if it's a little 5-minute walk after we have a meal, how it can be really beneficial for us in a number of ways with digestion and just how our food is, or pardon me, how our body's using the food we've just eaten in a better way, and how it can respond to that. So that is certainly something I've taken away, that it's a common theme of, hey, get a little, at least a 5-minute walk after eating, because there's a lot of great benefits with that. Yeah, I'm not seeing any other questions. I see a well done in the chat, but thank you guys so much for sharing great information for us today. Some takeaways that we can go ahead and incorporate today, and also just reminders for us to maybe next time when we're, picking items at the grocery store, things to keep in mind. And maybe making a little bit healthier choice whenever we have those options. So thank you guys, and have a wonderful rest of your day.